Well, it's my delight and pleasure to introduce to you the 2025-26 Bethel Seminary Karlson Scholar. The Karlson Scholar program was started a few years ago to connect major evangelical thinkers and leaders with Bethel Seminary and then the broader Bethel community. And this year's Karlson Scholar is Dr. Karen Swallow Pryor. Come on out, Karen. Dr. Pryor completed her PhD at the State University of New York at Buffalo. She completed her undergrad degree at Damon College in Amherst, New York. Her academic focus is British literature with a specialty in the 18th century. And she says that she loves this period for its emphasis on philosophy, ethics, aesthetics, and community, as well as its efforts at correcting the universal human impulse to gravitate toward extremes. She's the author of 5 books, numerous scholarly articles. Her work has appeared in Christianity Today, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Gospel Coalition, and many other places. Her most recent work is You Have a Calling, Finding Your Vocation in the True, Good, and Beautiful, and that was published just last fall. So please welcome Dr. Karen Swallow Pryor. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. God has a calling on your life, and your true calling looks so good on you. And the truth is, actually, that you have and will have over the course of your life many callings, not just one, even though right now in this season of your life, you're probably thinking about one particular calling, your career, your vocation, your jobs, but you have many callings, and finding and fulfilling those is a little bit like finding clothes that fit really well, or anything in the world that fits you. And that's why when you find what your calling is or what your true callings are, it does look good on you. And I want to talk a little bit about how you figure that out. And first, I think we need to define calling. What do I mean by that? We hear that word a lot, and being an English professor, I like to think about words and the meaning of words, and especially the literal meanings of words. And if we think of calling as kind of literally a call, like a call on the phone or a text these days usually, or an email or some message that comes from someone, then we will realize that a calling comes from outside. It comes from someone else. And in our culture today, I think we often get confused between calling and desire or passion. We might have desires, or we might be really passionate about something, and we assume that that means we're called to that thing. And sometimes that does happen, and actually, hopefully it will happen. But recognizing that our inner passions and our callings that come from outside aren't necessarily the same thing can help us to be more attuned to hearing and then deciding how to answer those calls when they come. So again, passion comes from inside, calling comes from outside. The shortest definition I like to give of calling that goes along with this is a divine invitation. Now, as Christians, we know divine refers to God, and we know that our true callings ultimately come from Him, whether or not we audibly hear Him or He, calls us directly. He usually uses people and circumstances and situations, and sometimes our desires and passions, and often our skills and abilities. We'll talk about those a little bit too. Those all play a part. But a calling is a divine invitation. It comes from outside of us. A calling is not something we actually choose. We choose whether or not to answer that call. And again, I want to emphasize that even though most of us in modern American life, and I know most of you in the season of life, are thinking about calling primarily in terms of what you'll do when you get out of school. Some of us are, what are we going to do when we grow up? And we're still asking those questions. But Callings include much more than just our jobs or our careers or our paid work. Callings actually include the roles and relationships that we're in. Our first calling, of course, as believers, is the calling to follow Christ, to be a Christian. That is the first and ultimate and greatest calling. But it is a calling. We get to decide whether to answer that call or not. Other callings include your calling to be a son or daughter to the parents God gave you. Because guess what? None of us got to choose our parents. And other callings include being a brother or sister to those in your family. Other callings are being a friend, a neighbor, a citizen. These are opportunities that we have, roles that we are called to, that we have to decide whether and how to fulfill. And those are going to look different in different circumstances. Even being a son or daughter, sometimes answering that call has to look different depending on the circumstances of family life. So again, calling includes all of these things, all of these roles that are ordained by God in his sovereignty, and we decide how to fill them. And the other thing about thinking about calling literally is that there are wrong numbers sometimes, right? Sometimes there can be a call, and we have to be the ones to discern through godly wisdom and good counsel whether or not that's an answer we should take or an invitation we should accept. Sometimes there are, what they call butt calls, right? It wasn't quite what somebody made a mistake there. Those kinds of calls can happen too, and that's why we have to seek the Lord's wisdom and be mindful in how we answer these calls or not. We can't accept every invitation, and there's a particular aspect of being in the modern world that is particular to us. So let me explain what I mean. For thousands and thousands of years in human history, and actually in many places around the world today, people don't get a lot of choices about their callings. If you were born to a farmer 2,000, 3,000 years ago, you were going to be a farmer. If you were born to royalty, if I had been born to royalty, I would have been a princess, and that would have been cool, I think. But I wasn't. So for thousands and thousands of years, whatever you were born into, that was your calling. The world changed. There's lots of books written on this. I'm just going to give a sentence or two to it. But the world changed. We entered the modern age, and with the modern age came the opportunity for us as individuals to have more agency, to have more responsibility, to have more choices. You guys have a lot of choices. I know you do. And that is a blessing, but also it's kind of a burden too. It's a weight you have to bear and something you have to steward with wisdom and responsibility. But again, know that even this relationship to your calling, this context in which you have so many choices and sometimes you're paralyzed and fearful of making the wrong one, that's particular to these times that we live in, that God chose for you and I to be alive in. So this is part of his calling as well, for us to be alive in this time, in this place, and to have the responsibility of these choices in front of us. And sometimes that includes making sure that it's not a wrong number, that we should answer this call and accept this invitation. And so a few things, again, I'm not going to be able to give you or even try to give you a formula or an easy answer or some sort of six-step solution to finding your true calling, but there are things that can guide us. First of all is, as I've already talked about, our particular circumstances, the time and place in which we live. There's an old sort of story, it's not even really a story, but an image about when the industrial age came along and horse-drawn carriages were replaced by the automobile. I love horses, but I'm glad we don't have to get around in buggies anymore. We have automobiles. But there's sort of this image about how buggy whip makers, the people who made buggy whips, no longer had jobs when the automobile came along. And that was frightening and scary and hard for them. They had to find new work and new callings or new ways to express their callings because of changes that happened in the world. I think a modern parallel is what we're going through right now with technology and artificial intelligence, which is something I don't like to think or talk about at all, but it's there, and there are people who are talking about the way in which their callings are changing because artificial intelligence may be doing something that they have done their entire lives. And so that doesn't mean they don't have a calling on their lives, or that doesn't mean the calling might not take a different form, but there is an aspect of being in a time and place that influences our callings. I was talking with Jonah, I don't know if he's still there, a little before chapel, and I hope, and Jonah's a marketing major, right? And we just briefly chatted about how this is a time and place where there is a great demand for marketing of all kinds because of technology and all the things that characterize our world. And he actually told me, I hope it's okay, I didn't get your permission to share this, that that this was part of what helped him make this decision, that there is a need and a demand out there. And sometimes those circumstances, that need, that demand, is a way that we can find, and this is sort of the theme I'm trying to weave into this talk this morning, find our fit in the world. Because there's us, the way we are, and then there's the world. And finding our fit depends on us and who we are, but it also depends on the world as it is. And so finding that fit is how we find what looks good on us in terms of our true calling. A little bit more of a concrete example is simply the fact that no matter what my passions or desires were, I was never, ever going to be a WNBA player. Right? There's a certain qualities you must have, including about a foot more of height than I have to be good at that, and also passions and desires, which I also lack. I suppose those could have been cultivated in me, but it's just I could wish with all my heart, and I could think I could do anything, but that is something that I would not likely do, because that's a reality of the world and it's a reality of me. And it's a basic example, but thinking about those things, thinking about maybe what isn't going to be a good fit, helps us to find what is a good fit. And again, to talk about our desires and passions, those can be helpful guides to finding our calling. But again, I have to emphasize, because of the culture we're in now, it is not true that if you pursue your passion, you will never work a day in your life. It's not true. And it's also not true that what you're passionate about is what you should pursue for paid work. Some of you should, and some of you will, and some of you will find great fulfillment in that, but not everyone will. Your passions are not always something that should be something that you get paid to do or that you spend your most time doing. And again, going back to the callings that are not of our choice, the things that we are called to do, invited to do, and we have to decide to answer, some of the callings that we will hear and answer and fulfill are ones we might never choose. I think, for example, of the calling I had a couple of years ago in being there for my mother as she was dying and taking care of her in our home and just simply being there and doing all that I could to help her and my father and be there during her last days. That was a divine calling. It was not something that I would have wanted to do or chosen to do. As a matter of fact, not to make light of a serious situation, but I always said the last thing I ever wanted to be in my work, there were two things. One was being a nurse, and there I was. God bless the nurses. Now there's a need for you, but there I was sort of in that position. And the second thing I never wanted to be, and don't tell me God doesn't have a sense of humor, is a teacher. because that's another story. But I did end up discovering accidentally during my PhD program that that's what I was created to do, was to teach. And that was one of the two things I didn't want to do, and the Lord had me do both. That's sometimes how calling can work. Again, not always. There are no formulas. But there are ways we can imagine things being different from how they look for our neighbor or our parents or our siblings, because God does things in different ways for each of us. So as I talk about the realities of the world and the realities of ourselves and finding that fit, I want to talk a little bit about beauty. Real beauty, actual literal beauty, but also just think about beauty as a metaphor. Because beauty I find it very interesting. I'm sorry if you don't. Hopefully I'll make it interesting. But beauty, it's an interesting philosophical and theological concept. It's also very practical and real. You all are trying to make yourselves look beautiful in one way or another, whatever your aesthetic might be, and you're probably making your dorm rooms or apartments look the way you want to in as much as you're able to. So actually, we really do care about beauty, even if we don't realize it, and even if that beauty takes different forms. But there's a saying about beauty that you've probably heard, and that is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Now, that's actually a very modern idea about beauty. It says that beauty is entirely subjective, right? And there is actually some truth to that. But there's an older classical tradition that goes all the way back to the ancient philosophers that says that beauty is actually objective, that beauty has objective qualities that can be measured and understood and that determine whether or not something is beautiful. If there are any math people in here, I am not one, but there's a thing called the golden ratio or the golden mean or Fibonacci's numbers. It's a ratio that's found in nature and architecture and sculptures and art, and it's this ratio that appears in almost every beautiful object, and I don't know what it is, but you can Google it. It's very fascinating. But this is an example of kind of how the objective qualities of buildings made by humans, of human faces and plant and animals all exhibit this ratio in one form or another. That's an objective quality. Well, again, going back to what I'm trying to help you think about today about fittedness, I think both are true. There are objective qualities to objects and to art and to people, and then there is our subjective understanding or experience of them. And when they fit together and fit together well, I think that's where we find real beauty. So just quickly, I'm going to talk about, again, a little more about beauty, about some of those qualities of beauty that the ancients saw and how they might apply to our own lives and callings. And for this, I'm calling on the Christian philosopher Aquinas, who famously identified the objective qualities of a beautiful work of art as these three things: integrity or wholeness, proportion, balance, and luminosity or light. And if you think about a painting, any art history people here or art majors, you know that you can go into a museum and see a painting and you can look for these things. Look for the completeness of the picture. Look for the way the light works. Look for the balance and proportion. These are classical understandings of what makes a good work of art. Well, I think that these properties also can be applied to our own lives and our calling. So we look, for example, for wholeness and integrity. And this goes back to, we understand integrity to be honesty, and certainly that's part of it, and we should be honest and authentic in all that we do. But there's also an aspect of simply wholeness, bringing our whole selves to all the callings that we might be fulfilling. So that means that whatever we are doing it as a Christian. Whatever we are doing it, we are also fulfilling our roles that we have in our families and with our friends. We bring integrity to everything that we do. And we also because we're bringing our whole selves, we bring proportion. Right now, you are students. To be proportionate, you have to put so much more effort and time into your studies than you will do later in life. And you don't get to do as many fun things as you might do over the summer. That's an element of proportion. But my favorite quality here is luminosity or light. Think about the light that you can bring to the world by doing whatever it is you're doing, being a student, later being some kind of a worker, working in ministry, working in healthcare, working in marketing. You can bring light to the world in what you do by doing it well, by being Christian in your virtues and your personality and in your posture toward other people, having an attitude of helpfulness and serving, which is the entire purpose of vocation, is for us to serve our neighbors. And when we do that, we bring light to the world. Whether you're a math teacher or a grocery store clerk or a truck driver, whatever it is that you might be, you bring light to the world. And I know you have to go to class, so I'm going to close on one point, and this is going back to the fittedness. There is a way you can look at anyone around you. I used the example of clothes before, but think about callings and careers and vocations. What fits right on one person, and you see them joyfully doing and being fulfilled, that does not mean it's a fit for you. You have to find the way that God made you, equipped you, gave you skills, gave you desires and passions to meet the needs of the world in this moment now where you are. You have to find that fit, and that is the calling that will look so good on you. Go in peace and serve the Lord. Thank you.